Okay, this is Dave speaking, and you'll also hear my colleague Chris, who's the manager of our compliance testing business. Our participation in this webinar is a result of the original contributor to the project, Dr. Wei Pan from the University of Plymouth, having to withdraw for personal reasons. Wei had previously been involved in research projects involving air tightness and knew of our position as a major player in the testing market. So here we are giving our view of the brief. An earlier study by Dr. Pan reviewed air tightness results of 287 dwellings built to post-2006 regulations. Another study by Leeds Met University covered around about 1,250 post-2006 test results, which were collected by NHBC. So the opportunity in the UK is to capture the massive data resulting from 6 years of air tightness testing for compliance with building regulations, and to try and progress this with future testing regimes. The challenge is how to do this without any project funding, or alternatively, how do we generate sufficient interest to source the funding? Just in case some of you don't know who BISRIA are, I know there's some people from the UK participants, but we're actually a research association with a membership base providing consultancy and technical services to the construction industry. One of those services that we offer is building regulation compliance testing. And we do that for sound insulation, ventilation and air tightness. The biggest part of our business is obviously air tightness. So far we've got something like 50,000 completions of test results for air tightness in buildings. Some of this information we report back to our house builder clients on a monthly and quarterly basis. So we do keep records of different types of build and so forth. So we have quite a large database of our own. We've also been involved in a number of retrofit projects where we've carried out before and after testing, which is outside of the building regulations. Chris is going to talk to you about compliance requirements that apply, because I think it's important to understand where we are in the UK with the testing requirement.
For dwellings, regulations came into effect in 2006 that required a sample of dwellings to be tested. That remained in the last edition of the building regulations, which is in 2010, and that increased the overall sample size required, hence more testing. More recently, Section 6 of the Scottish Building Standards also required air tightness testing. The testing that we conduct is conducted to a number of different testing standards. In England and Wales, that is ATMA, which is the Air Tightness Testing Measurement Association. Their technical standards, 2006 regulations was Technical Standard 1, and for Part L 2010, that's Technical Standard L1, and there's just some technical changes in there with regards to the test procedure. Section 6 for Scotland is conducted in accordance with EN 13829. The key thing to say with all of these is the results are declared as air permeability results Q50, so leakage rate per square metre of envelope area. In terms of enforcement of regulations, we have various building control bodies. National House Building Council is the main one for dwellings. Then we have a local authority building control as well, and we have a range of independent inspectors and verifiers in Scotland. Testing bodies, we have ATMA, again the Air Tightness Testing Measurement Association, which accredits its members to test both domestic and commercial buildings. We have BINDT, which is the British Institute of Non-Destructive Testing, and that accredits individuals. And at present there are 193 individuals that are registered to test, and 15 members of ATMA. And there's also a group of others which aren't accredited, but we know have been on the training courses. There are 2 companies that run training courses, and we're one of those. So we estimate that there are 400 people that have been on those courses that have failed to maintain their accreditation, and we suspect that they are still out there testing. In terms of testing frequency, 2006 regulations Testing frequency was somewhere between 10 and 25% of the development, and it depends on the development makeup. The 2010 regulations are somewhere between 35 and 100%, and the reason it's up to 100% is that some of the builders are electing to test all the dwellings because of a confidence factor that has been introduced into our regulation requirements. Just as for interest, UK build statistics, and this is taken from our government website, shows the number of completions that have been made in these previous years. We estimate that this means that we're conducting somewhere between 35 and 40,000 tests per year across all those different testing organisations, and we do anticipate that this will increase eventually to 100% of all new builds. At present, in terms of data, the data is held by the individual testers, by the APMA members. A part of their APMA membership is that they are required to be UCAS accredited, and that will require them to maintain records. Obviously, some of the data will be with the non-accredited testers. All the test data at some point will pass through the hands of the building control bodies and through the energy assessors that are inputting the data into the SAP calculations or the energy calculations, and obviously as well the developers sometimes hold their own databases as well. The problem is that none of those sources of data are linked together, and therefore the individual data isn't easily extractable into a database. So the problems that we have is that if we're looking at getting the data from the testing organisations, there are potentially over 600 of those. The concern with the data is the validity of the test results. There are such things as incorrect envelope parameters, considering the fact that we're working on air permeability, the use of uncalibrated equipment, and also incorrect test procedures. So we know of scenarios where people are doing air tightness testing and are sealing up the buildings in an incorrect fashion, taping up windows, doors, etc. There's also an issue of ownership of data. There's the client confidentiality issue, so we would need to seek their permission to be able to divulge that. And the biggest problem perhaps in looking at a true picture of what's going on is that quite often the only data that is reported are test passes. That's all that the developer will pass on to the building control. That's the only information that goes into the energy calculations. So it's more difficult to get hold of the fail data. Perhaps the easiest way or the most efficient way to get the database would be to go through a lodgement procedure where all air tightness test results were lodged. So the positives for this would be that all passes would be recorded, so we'd have all that data. The data could be verified by simple checks, so comparing the envelope area that's in the test file to the envelope area in the energy calculation. Obviously, it would provide us easy access to data. Because we can extract a number of pieces of information from those calculations, we can do some significant investigation into different parameters such as house type, construction method, etc. And a move to 100% testing will eventually mean that all of this data for every single house that's built will be available. The potential problems are that there's liable to be a cost implication for lodgement, which will probably stand with the testers, so there'll be a reluctance to lodge data that isn't essential, so i.e. anything that isn't a pass at the required mark. There is no indication of how many times the property has been tested previously to get that pass as well. Again, only the pass will be uploaded to the system.
Also, it's Dave again now, lodgement really can only be achieved by regulatory change. Some of the industry advisory groups are looking at this in terms of inclusion in the 2013 regulations. The only other route to find some funding for any research project, the usual routes of government departments, obviously the industry advisory groups, which ourselves and other ATMA representatives are members of, feedback information into government, but this is generally only little snippets of information, not the sort of volume numbers that we're talking about here. NHBC Foundation have funded projects in the past and have recently funded another project of looking at installation of Part F ventilation systems, NVHR and so forth. Energy Saving Trust, well, used to be a source of money for research projects, but changes in the government structure means that Energy Saving Trust really have very little money to spend nowadays, and again have to look for funding outside within the industry. Good Homes Alliance also again does put some money into funding small projects, but mainly for low energy consumption houses. And when we move on to Technology Strategy Board, their main interest is building performance evaluation, which is monitoring what is actually going on in new build and also in retrofit properties. And then of course we've got HBF. So really it's a question of trying to find some source of money to do this. I don't think ourselves here at BISRIA would be able to fund up a project such as this, and I'm sure even if we got all the ATMA members together, we probably wouldn't be able to do it either. I'm trying to move on to the next slide. Right, just to finish up, this is a little chart that we've quickly knocked up, nothing very fancy about it. Summarises the trend in airtightness from 2007, well it's a 5-year period, which is batched over something in the region of 35,000 tests. So you can see from that graph there's a good downward trend. It's interesting that if you look at the top floor flat, big improvement there over the time period. We're not quite sure what's happening with the semi-detached, which is the red line. In 2011 to 2012, maybe we've got a new builder on board. We're not sure. We're going to have to look into that and see. So really, if you find that of interest, that concludes our presentation.